Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. It is the second song of a Monday. Why would I start like this? We're going to do a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Sean. Extremely fun black metal. Highly recommend watching the music video for this one. It's a little shorter than the actual because it cuts an intro loop, but it features Chat Pile and is ridiculous. I think the song actually is pretty accurate to sensations of spiritual ecstasy, the feeling of barriers between annihilated. Nothing is ever too much. Enjoy. I will say, I come from the future. I am future Bryan. And I have watched the video. I've recorded the reaction already. There is a disclaimer I got to put out. There is a lot of special effects makeup in here of the violent and gore side. There's lots of fake blood and wounds, and a couple hearts get pulled out, if I remember. So if you're squeamish about any of that stuff, don't watch the video. Just put the tab in, somewhere else where you don't have to see the video, something like that. Just a little disclaimer. All right, let's get to it. That's so ridiculous. What in the world? Yeah, this lead guitar work is not traditional black metal, but there's also a lot of bass presence too. I have a hypothesis, but I need more information to confirm it, so stick with me for a second. Dude, this is wild. So does anyone else get the feeling that this is blackened pop screamo? Has all the energy of the Anchorman fight scene. Okay, blackened pop screamo with a healthy dose of classical? Not classical. Maybe? it's, none, it's like it's got a little bit of Pocket Bell's canon in it. Huh. I, you know, it's pretty rare for someone to play something for me that just leaves me speechless. Just shuts me up. Doesn't get me to ramble. This is one of those. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, this is one of those tracks that just breaks a lot of conceptions about how things work. In this case, to me, it's how black metal works, but also how popular music styles work. I mean, there is pop emo in here, but there's also a little bit of shoegaze, and there is some dashes of classical at times. Towards the end, I was like, this just it just reminds me of Pocket Bell's Canyon. But what does it mean? What am I supposed to say about this? I I think the thing is, at the end of the day, I've never heard anything like it, and so the few connections I have to things that I know about that I could comment on feel worthless to bring up. They're so surface level. Um, that it's like, why would you even talk about that? It's not of import compared to the wild eccentricities going on here, but I don't know how to quantize that into anything worth discussing. So, let's start with what I do know and improvise from there. We're gonna wing it today. This is blackened on some level. I know black metal isn't the only one to utilize consistent 16th notes throughout a song, but it is the one that feels most at place here for some reason. I'm not really quite sure. It's not really the production on this. It's very high quality production. The bass is present. The guitars are very audible. I can make out everything from their tone and timbre to the notes that they're playing. The vocals are kind of blackened as far as being close to the blackened scream, but I also think you could find vocals similar to this in the screamo realm too. So the drumming is kind of blackened, but I mean blast beats and alternating bass and kicks at fast speeds, you've also seen tech deaths. I wouldn't say there's anything in here that is particularly black metal, or I would say this is what roots it within that subgenre, or at least makes it a massive element of inspiration for the song. But there isn't an undeniable black metaliness to it. And I wish I could figure out why I felt that way about it. It could be that it's metal with atmosphere as its core and plays faster. Maybe. But there's an interesting elephant in the room there when we talk about atmosphere. When we listen to atmospheric black metal, the production and usually the guitar riffs are what lean into that. The production here I don't really think is too atmospheric. And the guitar riffs are not black metal at all. And this is bonkers. At least, well, let me take that back. It's not that it's not black metal, they're not atmospheric. They're riffs, not to create an atmosphere, not to create harmonic information, but to be riffs, to be a musical idea, and even melodic in a lot of places. These are guitar ideas that rise in pitch and lower in pitch and create phrasing within their ideas. There's no rhythmic change, but there is pitch change. And as we get closer to the end of the song, they tend to be less loop-based and more a series of ideas, kind of pushing past the idea of a riff or an ostinato into the realm of pure melody. Something that black metal very rarely does, at least traditionally. Um, I'm sure we have listened to black metal songs with guitar solos in them, but it's a rarity from my experience. Um, it's a very riff-based genre of music. Again, traditionally. Second wave, fourth wave, avant-garde, experimental, yeah, there's some cool stuff in there. Uh, and so the more I listen to the guitars, and the bass even, you can hear the bass in here, which is pretty cool. There's some neat little bass ideas going on. I begin to focus on what are these pitches? How do they come together? What chords are being presented? What is the harmonic information? And there really isn't a lot of that traditional pentatonic sound going on in here. There really isn't a lot of the Baroque sound that permeates a lot of black metal when they get outside the traditional metal pentatonic stuff and get into more of the classical stuff, which black metal is, I'd say it's kind of 50-50 as far as my experience with black metal. If you're getting more of the Baroque style or more of the metal style, they're both fairly represented equally within the genre. But this didn't feel like either of those. It felt more of a modern style of classical, but also mixed with pop emo. Some of the earlier riffs in particular carried on stuff that reminded me of, I mean, some of the brighter, poppier sounds from My Chemical Romance, particularly off of their Black Parade album, which kind of shifted outside of an emo realm in a lot of places and into art rock. And I guess technically there's some art rock vibes in here too then. What? It's just, it is wild to listen to the guitar played this way with these sounds as far as timbre goes, with these pitches, and not necessarily the pitches in isolation, but the pitches in clusters, how they're grouped together, the harmonic information, the chord progressions, the scales we're using. I've never heard anything like it. I really haven't. And this is just, I think this is the core of what blows my mind. Because the bass work, there's some cool stuff in there, and it does lean into some of that same harmonic uh, new sound to me. But rhythmically, it's in line with everything else. The drums are very black metal. It's a lot of fast playing. We don't get any of the hyper technical stuff we see with bands like Ungwa. It's really about getting into that rigidity of the 16th notes and really focusing in on that. We don't get any of the fun cymbal play or anything like that. There's no syncopation going on. And vocally, we have a screechy scream, higher pitched, and just the one tone, very black metal style of harsh. So it's really the guitar that changes everything, but also, I kind of touched on this earlier, the production. It's very clean. In fact, I would almost say, well, it's very crisp, but I would almost say it's also very clean for being a song that does have a disgusting element to it, just as far as the tone of the instruments and the tone of the vocals and all that. Everything is spaced out in a way and clearly represented in the mix that feels something closer to radio rock or even prog rock, something like Haken would put together, that very sterile production. Not quite on the same level as Haken, because Haken I don't even think uses like artificial or even real tape crackle in there. It feels very sterile. I think Haken is probably the most extreme side of clean production. But this has a lot of that space between the instruments, a lot of the cleanliness to the sound, a lot of um, pure presence. I don't feel like any of the information of any of the instruments, regardless of how compressed they are, whether it's the guitars or the vocals or the drums or any of it, are all very clear. I'm getting their full timbre. I'm getting their full coloring and characteristics. Nothing is getting shaved off through compression. And I find that interesting because it doesn't really make it less. No, I'm sure purists are going to say, no, this is too sterile, this is too clean, this just isn't my cup of tea. But to me, it still feels gnarly, despite the supremely hi-fi production. It's an interesting choice that I think works well with the harmonic information that feels at odds with the timbre of the instruments and the vibe they're going for, but in equal measure also works really well, at least for my ears, though I am not a true cult black metal listener. So I suppose take that with a grain of salt. Like I mentioned, I'm sure people who enjoy black metal, especially the fuzzy and grittiness of it, will not enjoy this track, or might not enjoy this track. But yeah, it's just kind of bonkers, man. Because, like, that takes me back to where I was at the beginning. Where do I go from this? Right? Musically, it's interesting. Production wise, it's interesting. Influence, it's interesting. But what does it all mean? I just picked out a bunch of stuff that I thought was odd about it, that separates it out from pretty much every other black metal I've listened to. But I don't think I have anything more to say about it. I'm going to see if I can find some lyrics. Maybe I can expand my thoughts through them. Maybe they'll point me in a specific direction. But as it stands, I don't really have a story that goes along with this. A part of that is just the static element of the song. We do have a couple of harmonic shifts, moving from emo ear sounds to more classical sounds. But I mean, the song is at one intensity pretty much the whole time. Oh, there is one last thing, the ending, right? Black metal to me is really about the non-stop aggression. There really aren't a lot of switch ups in a lot of black metal songs. Even the verses and choruses, they all use 16th notes. You just change your riff, you change your drum pattern, maybe you change your vocal delivery, but you just keep that energy going, right? Here, though, we had that energy, and a lot of it was rising energy. You listen to the guitar, they're playing these 16th notes just rising in pitch. Just getting like higher and higher and higher, and then there's just a stop. And then they come back in and do it again. And this feels very dramatic in a way that you would hear in contemporary like soundtrack work, right? Bum bum, bum bum, and you rise the pitch on the second time and the third time until you hit your peak, and that happens here too. We have this repeated idea of this escalating guitar line, really fast played, and then a break, and then you start at a little higher of a note and you end at a little higher of a note, and you just keep this going, and it just increases the intensity of this section. I think without any of the dynamic contrast in here, we don't really change volume. We don't have, a crescendo to bring the volume up. We're not increasing the tempo along here. It's still pretty intense as far as speed and volume and presence of instruments and layering and all that. That doesn't change throughout. So it doesn't quite have the impact that a full orchestra would bring to a similar concept, but it carries some of that same compositional idea, and I think for the same effect, though again I do think it's diminished because the song's just the same intensity all the time. But like, how does that, I don't even know, man. It's another one of those odd decisions that absolutely fits what the song is doing, but I don't really know what it's doing. It just feels like it should be there. And I think that's the thing with when you're doing something new, is that you just don't have context for it. And so you have to make new context. I think the best way to understand this song is to listen to more agriculture, which isn't something I can do right this very minute. Let me hit some lyrics, see what's going on there. See if that explains anything. Nope. There are not a lot of lines in here. It's actually very short lyrically for a 7-minute song, I think that was. Well, 6.5 for this version. But I think when I saw it on Spotify before I saw that I was requested to check out the music video, I think it's like 7:03, 7:05, something like that, for the full studio version. With the main difference being, as the commenter stated, that the intro loop was cut in half. Instead of listening to it like 4 times, maybe we listened to it twice, something like that. I'm assuming. Nothing to do with lyrics though. But we have picked over and then a dash. Like that's just the only line. It's almost like it's being interrupted. And then later we get to the first stanza. I'm going to first verse. I don't even know if we can call it that. There's no repeated lines in here as far as something I could say, oh, this is a chorus. And thinking back on the music, it just felt linear. I don't really think I felt a cycle of any sorts, which is even wilder. I don't think I mean, I'm sure there are black metal epics, but see, I think they would be in the progressive realm of black metal or avant-garde, where we don't have a chorus loop. I think most of the black metal we listen to. Anyways, agriculture decompose to the soil, let it grow, and in the setting sun hold ad infinitum. So right here we just have not necessarily a gardening metaphor, but just breaking down how things grow. There's decomposition that creates the soil. And then you put seeds in the soil and you let it grow and it sits in the sun, and you do this over and over and over. It's this life cycle, how decay fuels life. Then it says, gentle traveler, green as rose. I find this interesting because I don't think I've ever seen a green rose before. Maybe before they blossom. Obviously, the stem and the leaves are going to be green, but it's not usually what people think of when you talk about a rose specifically. A flower, maybe, in general, but a rose, I think most people think about the petals. Day to follow when you know, as your time will come, go, know not what you've done. I don't know. I think, based off of where we're going, which pretty much the other three stanzas are about not being afraid to die. I think this is somebody saying, hey, green as a rose. So you're green, you're young, you're inexperienced, right? Gentle traveler. It could be that this is maybe like before birth, if you want to think of a concept of a soul, right? And some deity on this other plane of existence says, hey, you're going to Earth, you're going to be a human being, you're going to have this consciousness for a bit. When your time comes, just go with the flow, right? Make it easier. I don't know about the line of know not what you've done, though. I don't quite understand that. Then it says, if I knew the shape of my face before I was born, I would not be afraid to die. Oh, wait, that goes back to the idea of pre-life. If you understood, yeah, if you understood pre-existence, you figure that death of this experience would go back to that pre-existence. I've talked about, in fact, just recently in this last week's album review, talking about stardust, non-existence, the state we were in for billions of years, of basically an infinite amount of years, and then for 100 years, give or take, we exist as this human consciousness, and then we return to non-existence for another infinity. This is such a small blip, and if we understood what we were before, it would make us less scared to return to that. I think that's what he's saying here. If I knew the shape of my face before I was born, I would not be afraid to die. In a forest with insects eating my body, I would not be afraid of that. I will bury another in the morning light, touching. If I can cover, I can set it. I don't understand this part. I will bury another in the morning light, touching. If I cover, I can set it. Yeah, that's not really making a lot of sense to me. But however, things are making more sense. We're talking about life cycles, how death fuels life, and the cycle of non-existence to existence. And that death wouldn't be as scary if we could learn anything about it, if anyone could remember anything about before their existence. If any of the near-death experiences where people have been dead, for several seconds or minutes, if any of that could actually be quantifiable, the experiences that these people have said that they've had while their heart has been stopped or their brain is stopped and stuff like that, then death wouldn't be as scary. If we could just quantize it, if we could know what it was. I think it's interesting then that it implies if we had this information, I would not be afraid, which is an implication that death is still scary. What that has to do with anything else, though, living is easy, any of the music, I don't know. Again, there's such a strange disconnect between all of the elements of this song, the harmonic information, the influences I feel, the fact that at my heart I still would place this under black metal, even though I can't really find a component that says this is definitely black metal, and even the lyrical themes mixed with how I felt listening to the song, none of it really comes together in a way that I can feel that I have any, not necessarily authoritative view, but that I have conviction in my views about what the song is doing or about. So I just continue to pick up small details that I tell you I found, but geez, I can't put this puzzle together. I just got a lot of pieces and I feel like I'm missing even more. Those are my thoughts. Agriculture's living is easy. Let me know yours. Do you have a hypothesis on what any of this is, how it fits together? I mean, it does, right? This song works 100%. It is 100% itself. I don't think there's any decision in here that I think was wrong to do. I don't think there's any component where I'm like, yeah, that's not really what I would have done if I was in charge of writing it. But I don't know why it works. So if you have a hypothesis on that, please let me know. You want to add on to anything that I said? Correct me on anything that I said. Maybe just have your own thoughts, opinions, and perspective about this track. Throw all that stuff down in the comments. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you to this menu. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.